Hey everybody, it's Merlin here, and today we're going to be starting our discussions on the One Piece story arcs. Now, the first arc is the Romance Dawn arc. It's part of the East Blue Saga. It's very brief, but a lot of important stuff is established, primarily with Luffy and Zoro, their backstories, and the relationship. Now, of course, we first get introduced to Luffy when he's very young in this flashback, and we learn that he really dreams of being a pirate. And being a pirate in this world is, of course, not what you typically think of being a pirate is. I mean, there are a lot of pirates that are bad, certainly, and go off and do their own thing, but being a pirate doesn't necessarily mean you're evil. It just means you kind of go off and do your own thing, and you aren't a pawn of the government, essentially. You're an adventurer. And Shanks is the awesome embodiment of that. He just kind of is a hero who sticks up for the little guy, in this case Luffy. And Luffy really admires Shanks because he is one of the greatest pirates that he knows, and naturally there are some bandits that come in. They're kind of warring with the pirates. And we learn that Shanks, once again, is kind of that hero, stands up for everybody. There's a battle with the bandits, and Luffy does end up eating the gum fruit, but can't handle it because he's too young, can't become a pirate, and of course, he is saved by Shanks, but Shanks, gets severely injured, of course. And Shanks goes off, leaving Luffy with his dream of becoming the greatest pirate ever. Then we flash forward, he goes off and starts on his adventures, and he meets Coby, who is a character who I think people like. I remember kind of liking him, but he's the stowaway who is on the same ship that Luffy's on, kind of, just basically going around trying to survive, kind of going out there trying to be a pirate at this point, with basically nothing but his abilities and his wonderful cheer. And we find that though Coby is, very cowardly, he has a dream of being a Marine, but he's being subjugated by the captain of the ship, and Luffy basically saves him, and that's pretty much what happens there. And then you meet Zoro when they come to this island, I believe it's Shellstown, where Captain Morgan and his Marines are pretty much subjugating the town, and this is the first time we're introduced to the Marines as a primary military and governmental body in this world. And it's pretty clear off the bat that the Marines seem more corrupt and violent than a lot of the pirates, or at least as bad as a lot of the pirates. And even though Zoro has been captured and he's imprisoned as a pirate hunter, that's not necessarily true. And it turns out that, of course, Zoro was sticking up for somebody, and this town is dominated. And Luffy and Zoro, even though they are complete polar opposites, they have this utmost respect for each other. And of course, I think the most important thing is we learn Zoro's backstory, which is, about as important, if not even more so, than Luffy's. Though whether or not it works is a whole different story. But eventually, of course, they defeat Captain Morgan, they save the town, they decide they're going to team up and help each other establish their dreams. Zoro wants to be the greatest sword fighter ever, when we learn based upon his backstory, and Luffy, of course, wants to be the greatest pirate ever, whatever that means to him. In terms of a retrospective, I will say that I remember that when I watched One Piece years and years ago, I caught a couple episodes of the 4Kids dub, and I thought it was terrible. And of course, like a lot of people, that sort of turned you off from One Piece because, let's face it, it's kind of silly and not the most accessible type of anime at first. Because it's got a really wacky art style, it's a very bizarre world, and the whole idea of the pirates and this big world established that there's a lot to take in really quickly, and thankfully we've had a lot of time to build upon that. But these initial episodes really have to hook you in, and I think that combined with just the fact that the dub was horrible, the edits were horrible and everything, that turned a lot of people off to One Piece, including myself. Though I don't know if I ever really hated it, I just didn't think it was anything particularly worth talking about. But then I found out that Funimation got a hold of it, and apparently it was a very popular series in Japan. This was years ago, and I decided to check out these early episodes. And I was really surprised by the quality. It just was a lot better than I expected it to be, and you got to see the full story established. And I have to say, the first couple episodes of the Romance Dawn arc, I actually really enjoyed. I think that they're short, sweet, to the point, but they serve their function to establish the characters well and the relations. I mean, for a shonen hero, Luffy, serves that function of the standard protagonist. He's upbeat, he's cheerful, he has big dreams, he's got a big heart, he's a fighter who's determined. Nothing really gets him down too much, but of course, if something does get really serious, he will too. He's the kind of hero that a lot of young people could certainly relate to and look up to, and he's a decent protagonist. I mean, I think Luffy's pretty well established as funny and enjoyable, easy to follow, you get invested in his story, because there is some genuine tension there. I think with achieving the dream of Shanks, and in a way, once again, the whole idea of the father figure going off and kind of abandoning the son to let him become his own man is a trope that comes up in shonen, and One Piece is no exception, that has strengths and negatives depending on how you want to look at it, but it's there, and I think that's one of the more compelling aspects of Luffy is that you have that dream, and you know why, and it's something that it sticks with you throughout the series, and of course comes back later when eventually we are reintroduced to Shanks. Spoilers if you don't know that for some reason. When it comes to Coby, I actually really liked Coby. I liked his relationship with Luffy. I like the fact that Luffy serves as somebody who can inspire this kid, even though he seems cowardly. He seems like this little insignificant kid, but he wants to be a Marine, and even though his ideas of what a Marine are, they seem twisted by the bad guys they encounter, he doesn't give up. And Luffy serves to kind of cheer him on. And that's, once again, I think speaking to the primary function that Luffy and a lot of shonen protagonists serve to be that inspirational force of positivity that makes these shows so appealing and makes One Piece just kind of fun and wholesome. I think Luffy and his outlook is one of the best representations of that, and we see that in these early episodes. And I mean, I don't know, I think people hate on Coby, but I always liked him, especially early on. You know, I thought he was a fun character, and, you know, I thought he was fine. We get the most action, I guess, the best fights early on with Captain Morgan and his Marines versus Zoro and Luffy, and we get to see Zoro show off his sword skills, and we get to see him established as the dark and gritty, and, of course, more macho of the two guys, the older of the crew, and he's got his backstory, and, of course, he's an appealing character as well, but for different reasons. He has a clear, defined goal. He seems very rigid in his outlook, and he's also very focused like Luffy, though, just in a different direction. And, of course, I think one thing about One Piece, much like perceptions people may have of the series, is that perceptions of people based on their established names or creeds or where they come from, based upon those definitions, aren't always the same. Like, for instance, you know, pirates aren't necessarily what you would expect them to be. They're not always necessarily evil criminals. And the Marines are oftentimes a corrupted evil. And somebody who's established as a pirate hunter, there might be more going on there. There might be a time when I'll focus on more about Zoro if I do an analysis on his backstory, because I will touch on it a bit here, though. Basically, Zoro was training, met this girl, they were big rivals, they competed with each other to be the best. She was always better than he was, but she died at a young age, and Zoro was like, you know, because he admired her so much and he never got to defeat her, but you know, based upon this, he kind of grew to care about her, thought of her as a friend, a sister, whatever. And he just felt inspired, like, to honor this person, I will be the best swordsman I can be because you never could be. Because he's basically honoring her life and her memory. And I think that sounds beautiful, to be completely honest. It's a very romanticized type of thing that is quite shonen, and I guess I could see that being rooted in believability to some extent, but in terms of the backstories of pretty much every other character that joins the Straw Hats, I've always found that his dedication to this idea was just a little too intense for what it was. I just think it's not a bad backstory. Like, don't get me wrong. I think it serves it fine. I think it certainly works well enough to get him to be motivated because, once again, he has that memory driving him, which is maybe not quite as intense as Luffy's, but it certainly has an element of tragedy to it. But like I said, we'll get into it later, but when we get into Usopp and Sanji and, you know, we get into Robin, you know, Nami, I mean, come on. When you compare him to pretty much everybody else, we'll get into that later. The point is, I think he has a good backstory. I think Zoro's a fine character. I think the most important thing is that even though he and Luffy are significantly different, they work well with each other. And they really are the linchpin of the crew. And that's really what this whole first arc is about. It's about establishing the characters, establishing their relations to each other, the core of the Straw Hats and what they're going to be, the core ideas of the show and the world. And I think you get a pretty good dash of One Piece. Now, there's obviously a whole lot more that's explored later on, but it's definitely enough to get you in the right direction. Is it enough that I could say you could watch this and you should dive into it or give up on it? Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't like One Piece right away, you might not enjoy this as much, but I'd say you definitely should go and give it another shot. I think it's a good brief arc to establish things really quickly, and there really aren't any major problems with it. Not too much happens, but everything that happens is pretty meaningful. But next time we're going to be talking a little more about a certain villain who is a staple of the series and introducing some other characters. But anyway, guys, let me know what you thought about the video. Did you guys like the early episodes with Romance Dawn? I'm sure you did. I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys next time. stay magical.